All right, we are in the home stretch. We've got 3 very good presentations for you, so thank you guys for staying out. My name is Alan Dick. I'm one of the partners here at GrowCommerce. If you love the content that you've been seeing so far, then I'll take all the credit. If you don't like it, then it's clearly their fault. So, sorry, bad joke, I'm tired. Yeah, I have reviewed so many sessions over the past 4 weeks. So here we are. Let's get straight on with it. I want to introduce Peter Francis, the Vice President of Digital Growth and Acquisition at T-Mobile. He's got a nice little talk for you. Joining him is Jim Ewel, the President of Agile Marketing, and they've got a great little talk for you on how the UNCARRIER does Agile Marketing. So to wrap things up, let's give them a good round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim and Peter. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll try and keep this relatively brief, right? As Alan mentioned, my name is Peter Francis. I run growth and acquisition at T-Mobile. Jim's going to be joining me and telling you about some of the things that we're seeing, right? I want to start by saying something that Panos said this afternoon at the retail symposium, right? He said 50% of the work that they do as a tech accelerator for retail is not about the tech. It's about changing culture. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about the scale at which culture is changing. And my whole career has been built on spotting trends. So right in the late 90s, I worked for this company called Ford, small company. They were investigating a technology. I got to join their accelerator technologies. And there was this engineering head who was really excited about a technology. He called it rapid prototyping. He said, it's really cool. Wait till you see it. You get to print stuff, but in 3D. I'm going to call it 3D printing. And this was 1995. Right? And it was really cool. I learned a lot from that. And that was awesome for me. And then right around 2002, I went to grad school at Northwestern. There was this guy who was like learning about some technology. It was called computational statistics. Took it, worst 3 classes of my life. I have no idea why I spent 3 quarters on it, but spent a whole year doing it. I said, oh, this could be really cool. Like, what do you call this stuff? He's like, I'm trying to give it a catchy name. I think we're going to call it machine learning. And it was really cool. And I got to learn that. It was amazing. And right around 2010, I joined T-Mobile. And T-Mobile was great for me because mobile marketing, and if you kind of think about mobile marketing, was really, really starting to change right around 2010, right? And mobile was really starting to take off. So to a certain extent, this is a story not about technologies, but about what is changing and what you need to do as marketers, particularly scale marketers, to go and grow. All of you are in here because you're excited about growth. And those of you who are in late stage growth, particularly at large matrixed organizations, right? I see folks here from very, very big brands. If you're in a large matrix organization and if you didn't grow up digital first, it's about what you need to go change in order to make growth happen, right? So just a quick overview. This is my team. We do about 500 million visits. We do about 4 million calls, 900 agents, 80 leaders. My team runs about $1 billion in revenue. To give you a size of scale, that's my team. T-Mobile does about 20 billion in revenue a year. We are the fastest growing channel, direct acquisition, the fastest growing channel of the fastest growing wireless network in the US. And it's sort of based because of this, because we don't believe that we're the same as every other carrier out there. We explicitly believe that we want to differentiate ourselves from the herd. We don't want to be Verizon, AT&T. We think that that model of doing wireless is just completely broken. And we want to go out there and have a lot of marketing that talks about why the category is broken. It's not the usual, we want to participate in the category, we want to be a brand in the category. We don't want to be in that category, right? And that takes a lot of work, but it pays off. When you're that focused, it pays off. So I want to talk to you a little bit and set context for how fast this thing is growing, right? Set context for success. We went from about 35 million people when I took over this team, 35 million subscribers, so talk about a SaaS business at scale, to about 72 million. We announced Q2 earnings yesterday. It is the 18th straight quarter of us being #1 in the industry in terms of total subscribers joining T-Mobile, right? And that level of scale, we believe, comes from customer centricity, right? It's relatively easy to do, go in and say, like, we don't worry about marketing, we don't worry about everything else, we worry about customer centricity, but it doesn't quite work that way. Because even if you're the best wireless provider, even if you have the best product, you have to get the word out. Quick show of hands, how many of you shopped for wireless in the last 3 months? Well, it's a pretty good crowd. Shop for wireless in the last 2 years. Have switched wireless, not just shopped, you gotta have switched. Last 3 years, show of hands. In the last 10 years. About 30% of the room, you guys, and I do this over and over again, right? Even though we have the best product, we've got wireless for like 70, unlimited everything, no questions asked, taxes and fees included, for about $70. We have 99.7% of the coverage of Verizon, right? We have faster download speeds in every market than every other carrier out there. And even now, there are 120 million people on Verizon. There are 130 people sitting with AT&T phones. It blows my mind. It's completely stupid. People are still using the same wireless provider. 70% of people are using the same wireless provider they used 10 years ago. And that's completely crazy, right? Because 10 years ago, 2007, the iPhone hadn't been invented yet. The hot phone was the Motorola Razr. And people are still sticking with them. And it's because of the power of marketing. It's because the power of marketing in telling people that there's a better product out there and moving people through the whole consideration cycle. But how do you do that when you're being outspent? Last year, Verizon alone spent $2.4 billion in marketing. We don't spend anywhere close to that money. We're being outspent 2 to 1 in this marketplace. So how do you go change? So this is our story, right? Agile marketing, 2 things I want to tell you. Things that I wish I knew 18 months ago, and things that I see and where we're about to get headed. So I'm going to tell you 3 things, 3 macro trends that have nothing to do with technology, but stuff that I see that's nearly as important as 3D printing was in 1995, nearly as important as machine learning was in 2002, and what I'm seeing today. And if you want to be a marketer tomorrow, here's what you need to do, right? Secret thing number 1, there's no marketing assembly line anymore. Every single month is unique. How many of you here have been in your job for more than a year? Show of hands. Good, solid going, guys. 2 years? More than 2 years? Good going. When I do this in Silicon Valley, I get nobody. Like, nobody stays in job for more than 2 years. Well, I was down in San Francisco last week, and I was talking to some really sharp guys, and there's one guy who's like CEO of a major agency. I mean, multiple billions of dollars in like media agency. And he was talking about how marketing planning used to get done in 1980. In 1980, here's how the annual marketing strategy summit worked. They'd pull out the stuff that they did last year, they'd fluff and buff it up, move the dates because Thanksgiving occurs in this week versus that week. They'd fluff and buff it, and that was the strategy, right? There's no marketing assembly line anymore because every single month is unique. And that's certainly true of the category. I won't spend too much time on this because all of you guys know this inherently. No one, and right there's the proof point, no one is using their strategies from last year, right? And certainly not at T-Mobile, because at T-Mobile, we've gone in and changed the industry. We're in a category where the industry is fundamentally different every single quarter. So we have no one to blame but ourselves, right? When we say contracts, we took out contracts 3 years ago, so now there's no contracts. So we used to have these really nice cycles where we paid attention to customers every 24 months. We killed that. So we did that to ourselves. We changed the category. And I'm hoping that each and every one of you, if you're sitting here in this room, it's because you want to be a disruptor. You want to be a category disruptor. You want to go change. So the first thing to learn, when you disrupt the category, be careful what you wish for. Because you will change your seasonality. You will change what your product and composition looks like. And then you end up with things like this. This has already been referenced once today, but I just want to hit this again. This guy, John Wanamaker, like if you're from Philly, Wanamakers, like amazing company. This guy was the 35th Postmaster General, super sharp guy, right? And he's saying things like, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. Everybody in marketing trots this out sooner or later. If you work for an ad tech company, you're going to trot this out, right? Interesting. But what kind of advertising did he do? So I did some research, went in and looked at his advertising. Here's an ad that John Wanamaker put out, right? Silk neckties, not as good as they look, but they're good enough, 25 cents. If this is the kind of horseshit you put out, John, really, come on. Like, no wonder your money's being wasted, right? But it turns out not. Sold out same day, a thing that he couldn't move. It sold out the same day, 0 waste, 100% attribution. And this was the kind of advertising this guy was doing. Retail, call to action advertising, no brand advertising. And a guy like this is saying half his money is wasted, right? So if you think about it, like this problem has only compounded. It hasn't gotten easier. And this is what my KPI sheet looks like right now. Every morning at 8 a.m., we've got to stand up, go through my KPIs. We talk about upper funnel, we talk about mid funnel, we talk about lead generation, we go cross-channel. It's amazing. It's absolute KPI hell, you guys. It all looks like this. We're trying to spot trends. We're trying to spot like decompositions. We're trying to go see what the underlying factor looks like. Number one thing is about attribution, and it's not getting easy, right? So the 2 things, the most important trend, right? There's no assembly line. Every month is unique. You're going to make it. Don't copy your trends from last month. You can't spot it in your data. You're going to look at it in your data. You're going to have to test it out. So the thing that I would tell you with that trend, the one thing I tell everybody in here, you have to build a high-tempo testing culture. Right? You're going to make your own market. You have to figure out what works. You have to look at the data and build a test culture and figure out what's going to work for you. If anybody stands up here on stage and says, here are the 5 things you need to learn as marketers, and you write them down, it's wrong. Because you are going to have to make the category. You're going to have to make a product. And that's trend number 1, thing I wish I knew 18 months ago. Thing number 2, marketing the myth no longer works. Every single thing that you see in ad tech and martech today, and I'm in the mobile industry, I'll tell you, it's based on this fundamental realization, and I want to pass that over to you guys, right? We are living in the matrix today. We're living in the matrix. That up there is from the Moment app. That is my personal daily mobile phone usage, right? My personal daily mobile phone usage. I would ask you all, if you want a scary personal experiment and you have an iPhone, download the Moment app. It's out there. Look at your daily personal usage. Look at what you're using. It will shock you. And what's interesting is that it's not just urban, it's not just Silicon Valley. The average adult user in the US today, this is stats from last year, at about 5.6 hours a day, right, of connected device usage. This year it's gone up to about 7 hours a day. If you think that people sleep for about 30% of the day, right? They sleep for about 8 hours. This represents somewhere between 40 and 50% of people's waking time with a phone. We might as well have this thing stuck to our head. It's just not mounted on our heads yet. But 30 to 50% of the time, your customers, your target audience is living in the matrix because they're connected. It's not virtual reality, it's mixed reality, and it's here today. Here's the other problem, that people have moved past this. We're still doing digital marketing like we did in 2002, assuming that people are sitting in a static location. But that's not true, because mobile's changed that. 2016 was another tipping point. In 2016, worldwide, there was more mobile traffic than desktop traffic. And that's another tipping point that you need to think about. People talk about the mobile avalanche. The most important thing you need to learn about mobile is that people are taking their screens and moving around the world. Which brings us to this really important realization about marketing the myth, right? 88% of time, people, and this is my category from my research, 88% of the time, 9 out of 10 people, spent their time researching the product online before they bought, and this is about cell phones. But 7 out of 10 people, up sharply from 7 years ago, up 14 percentage points from 7 years ago, said that they want to finish in a store. And that is completely crazy. It's not if you look at the underlying analysis. The underlying analysis is like, hey, look, I'm doing this research online. But we think this is crazy because they're like, wait, you did your research at home. Why are you walking into a store? That's wrong. They're doing their research on a mobile phone while sitting on a bus stop. And they're like, oh, I guess that looks cool. I guess I'll get off here at Times Square, and there's a giant store right in front of me. I'm just going to walk in. And that's where people are most comfortable. And it's just a really, really interesting point of convergence. The last thing, you guys, the class of 2016, before I tell you about this example, the class of 2016 was the first class that grew up with always-on HTML web. Let that blow your mind for a second. The class of 2016 just entering the workforce. Because the internet, Netscape Navigator, was invented in 1994. We forget that because it's so pervasive in our lives. This is one of the fastest adopted technologies in human civilization. But the internet was invented in 1994. And that class of people who think the internet is just part of who they are, they don't think about the internet, they don't think about browsing, that class is in the environment today. And what that means is that devices and connectivity have become critical. There's no such thing as a UX trick. So thing number one is that there's no marketing calendar. Thing number two is the way that you think about marketing has to change, because digital marketing is not a thing. Digital marketing is just part of your life. Think about the last time someone talked to you about UX. It's like, oh, that's really cool, UX. The last example is my example up here, which is Tinder. People say, ooh, look at that, I can swipe right. I can swipe left. Nobody does that anymore. They just talk about usability and how usable something is, right? A UX trick doesn't matter anymore. Only the experience matters. And we're starting to do that decomposition. Marketing the myth does not work, because people are taking their little pieces of marketing on their phones, right, and walking around the world with it. If you think this is funny, think about McDonald's problems. They cannot show a picture of a Big Mac on advertising anymore because people are all walking in with their mobile phones, taking a picture of their soggy Big Mac and the Big Mac they saw and said, this is shit. This is not what you advertised. It happens all the time. They're seriously considering not showing the product anymore, you guys. It's that bad. You would think that they would invest in product marketing, and my friend who runs Red Robin is saying, no, we actually embrace that, and now we're just trying to make a better product. This is good. Marketing the myth doesn't work. What must work is doing a better experience, and that's mixed reality. So the thing that I want to leave you, trend number 2, marketing the myth does not work. All in agreement? Fair enough, I've convinced you. You have to move from marketing myths to highlighting moments of truth, which means for you as marketers, thing number 2 is stop worrying about what marketing is, start worrying about what the product is that you're selling. You have to know the product better than your product management team. You have to know it inside out. You have to know what about it resonates with your customers, and that's the thing that you've got to highlight. Your job as marketers, your job as people who worry about growth, is to understand what about the product appeals to your customers and find that thing and make it resonate with your audience. Thing number 3, you have to change your teams, not just yourselves. And you have to introduce this change when things are going really, really well. Here's my scale problem. My scale problem is that TV is very efficient. I run a media mix model. It's super complicated. It runs over 3 years. It's statistically highly significant. I know exactly what medium is working for me. It's TV. TV has incredible broad reach. It's linear TV. It's completely dead. I don't get any closed loop data out of it, but it's incredible for getting the word out. There's nothing more efficient than TV. That's my scale problem. I've got another scale problem. I've got 5,000 brick and mortar stores, you guys. It isn't like Warby Parker. It isn't like a small company. I've got 5,000 brick and mortar retail stores. 90% of my target customer lives within a 5-minute drive of a retail store, which means driving direct closed loop e-commerce makes no sense. I should be driving them into a store. But when I drive them into a store, I lose all data. Everybody wants to sell me a beacon. Beacons are shit. The data doesn't connect to each other. But I've become a beacon for people selling beacons. Everybody wants to sell me one, and everyone promises me they have better data. They don't. But these are scale problems. And the only way we've been able to get over these scale problems are heroes. The individual analyst who knew exactly how to do fingerprint matching for MAC addresses who got us over our beacons. The person on TV who figured out how to do addressable TV and learned how to do small tests. These individual heroes, we're working on them. That's what's powering our success. But we're burning them out, and that's a problem, right? So we've got to move from individual hero mode to figure out how to go scale this up. How do I find 5 amazing heroes and turn that into 5 amazing teams, possibly of 25 people? And that was for us little a agile. And little a agile was like, we're going to move quickly. We're going to test and we're going to learn. We're going to go, right? Chris Rock likes to say this theory of the way that he did 45 minutes of beautiful HBO content is that he'd go to clubs and do some bad jokes. He'd leave a trail of dead bad jokes behind him, right? I think that's amazing. I want my small teams to go leave a trail of dead bad advertising, and when it works, we scale it up to TV. This is great. This is how I want to learn. Moving from little a agile to big a agile and making this consistent and making this specific is really, really hard. And this is where, after 25 years of learning one thing after another, of growing, of doing crazy breakout technology, I'd reached my limit, right? Learning how to do scalable things that don't break people, learning how to do everything that we learned about digital advertising and data, and scaling that up to work for TV, that's where I realized I needed some help. So, thing number 3, you have to introduce change when things are going well, really, really well. And it's because of the dopamine. You need a team that's winning. You need to see a team that's up on top. And that team needs to feel like, okay, we're up on top and now we're changing. And telling them to forget about everything that they'd learned, that we don't just want them to survive, we want them to thrive in this new world of the thing that's coming. That's when we went out and got Jim. And Jim's going to tell you a little bit of a story of how we translate this clarity of purpose and how we translate this in terms of managerial intent with some really, really old techniques to do an important thing. To break down the silos of the way that we think about marketing versus product, marketing versus creative, marketing versus test and dev. How do you go away and create a new way of working, which is value stream mapping? And so we got Jim. We were terrifically lucky. Jim was CEO of companies like Odometry, but also worked at places like Microsoft. And he's been really trying to figure out how to tie traditional and digital together. We did 6 classes, about 70 champions, and you'll hear from Jim that story.
All right. So Peter talked a little bit about what we've done. Peter, which button am I pushing here? This one, obviously. Okay, thanks. Where I'm focused now is on helping the teams understand that doing Agile is not the same as being Agile. What do I mean by that? Well, we have taken a lot of the techniques from Agile software development, things like Kanban boards, or daily scrums, and stand-ups, and things like that. And we've applied those to marketing. And there's no question that there is a benefit to doing that, okay? It's improved the communication, it's improved the cooperation of the different groups, all those kinds of things. But it's a small benefit. It's on the order of 20%, okay? Where you get the really big benefit is through adopting an agile mindset and also fundamentally changing the jobs of executive management and the people doing the work, and changing the relationship between those two groups, okay? So how are we doing that? What problems exactly are we trying to address? First challenge is moving from a very top-down management style to what we call leadership at all levels. Peter showed you the incredible growth over the last 5 years that T-Mobile has experienced, okay? And they've done that to a great extent because they have great leaders, okay? John Legere, the CEO, the COO, Michael Sievert, have provided many of these, what they call UNCARRIER signature moves, and those come from the top down. Now that's great, except that it trains everybody in the organization to be executors, okay? All the ideas come from up here, we're gonna execute. That's not what we want going forward for several different reasons. One is, I've heard the word millennial used at least 100 times at this conference, right? You can tell by just the look at me, I'm not a millennial, right? But millennials are such an important part of the workplace right now. And that whole corporate ladder thing and climbing up the corporate ladder and 15 years from now, maybe I'm going to have an impact. Not so much, as my daughter would say, okay? They are looking to have an impact today. They want to be engaged today. They want to be part of the whole thing, okay? And so we need to have that kind of leadership at all levels and engage them in doing things. How are we going to do that? How many of the people in this room have heard of a man named David Marquet? No one, okay? I'm going to introduce you to one of the best management videos, honestly, I've ever seen, okay? You go to YouTube and you put in this guy's name as a search term, okay? And you'll come across this video. What I'd love to do right now is to play that video, but it's about 10 minutes long and I just don't have time. So I'm just going to take you through a little bit of it. David Marquet is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He was commander of the USS Santa Fe, a nuclear submarine. Very complex piece of equipment, very complex environment in terms of the organization, right? And he wanted to do things in a different way. When he took over the Santa Fe, it was the worst performing submarine in the fleet, bar none, absolutely the worst, okay? A year later, when they had their annual inspection, they were the best, not just in the Pacific, not just that year, they were the best performing that they had ever seen. So how did he take that sub and go from worst to absolute best in just a year, all right? He did that through this thing he calls intent-based management. And it involves engaging everyone to think about what they're doing. Now, if you want your people to think, okay, when somebody says, what do you want me to do? You don't do what you're tempted to do as a leader, right? As leaders, we say we're knowledgeable, right? We know what to do in a situation. And so we're tempted to say left rudder, heading 255, tell them exactly what to do. And as David would say, no, you don't want to do that. What you want to do instead is you want to express your intent. So in this case, describe the situation. We have an enemy submarine up here. We want to make sure that we can be there to surprise that enemy sub. And then ask a question. Where do you think we should position the ship? Okay? What do you want me to do? And the sailor then says, over here. And if that's right, yes, absolutely. And then go do it. So what's happening there is both the leader and the person doing the work are both expressing their intent, okay? This is a huge change. It means that no longer are people asking for permission. And what it does is it transfers the psychological ownership from the captain or the leader over to the individuals who are doing the work, okay? Totally different way of managing an organization. Now, there's a problem with this. You see what it is? If, let's say, that a sailor says, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship, and they forget to batten down all the hatches, you've heard that term, right? Who gets blamed? The captain, right? He's the one who's going to get court-martialed. So he needs to be absolutely sure that everyone on the team is competent to take those decisions. You're going to push decision-making down? You got to make sure everybody is competent to make those decisions. So you got to make sure everybody understands all men are below, hatches are shut, all these different things for the sub. What that means is that as managers, our job is to do two very important things. This is a little different. One is to ensure the competence of our people. We need to be teachers. We need to be trainers. We need to make sure that everybody is competent and transfer our own knowledge to them. The second piece that we have to do, and I call this first piece, doing it right. The second piece is doing the right thing. And that's giving them clarity. Clarity about what's important and what the priorities are. Now, the second problem we're trying to solve for is what I call the other matrix, not the one that Peter referred to in working out in the world or whatever. T-Mobile, like many organizations, has these verticals: marketing, strategy, creative, web development, etc. But if you think of any major project, it takes people from all those different disciplines to get anything done. And so what they do is they spin up these virtual teams where they have people from all of those different disciplines. The problem is that anybody in each one of those different disciplines has 10 or 12 different projects on their plate. How do they establish the priorities? They don't, okay? And so things don't get done. It's like, it's not anybody's number one priority. So how do you fix that? You fix it by management establishing the portfolios of what's important. Now, some of you do this all the time. You say, what are the top 3 themes of what we are doing in this particular quarter? Okay? That's great. That's a good first start. But you've got to take that further in order to make this concrete. You have to translate those themes into what we call value streams. A value stream is the sequence of activities that a customer or a prospect uses to recognize and to realize value. How do customers get value from what they're doing? They follow a sequence of activities like the sign-up process. You're getting radical simplicity, you do that through the sign-up process, okay? And management's job is to translate those themes into those value maps, and then what we're looking at doing is standing up teams to focus on those particular value streams, okay? And put dedicated people in there who will focus on those value streams and iterate in a rapid fashion and make things happen for each one of those value streams. So in summary, we've kind of talked about 5 different things, and they're a little bit about T-Mobile's story, but I hope too that they are things that you can take home and think about in your business, okay? Peter talked about there's no more assembly line, and the way you get past assembly line marketing, and the way you get past that is that you create a culture of high tempo testing. He also talked about it's no longer enough to market the myth. You need to identify those moments of truth for the customer and really start addressing those in an honest way. The third is introduce change, not when things are going badly, because it's too late then. You need to introduce change, especially when things are going well. And lastly, I talked about 2 things. One is providing leadership at all levels, fundamentally changing the relationship between management and the people doing the work. And second, really understanding where are your customers getting value, mapping those out and deciding what are those most important value streams. So do we have time for, I know we ran over a little bit.
No, we have time for some Q&A while we switch out the laptop. Does anyone have any questions for Jim and Peter? Going once? Oh, yes. I'll run this over for you.
So I love this approach to organizational development, but how long did it take you to change the culture to reflect what you have on the screen here?
Yeah, dude, we're still doing it, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? I'll say T-Mobile's not hidebound at all, right? I show up to work and it kicks in a sweatshirt. This is dressy for me. It's important, right? Because moving people, even in a culture like that, to saying you're not doing marketing the way that you thought you were doing marketing. It's not called marketing anymore. You have to go spend some time with product teams. It's really hard. And the one thing that surprised me, and Jim, you could talk about this too, is that really self-starter people were sitting around waiting for permission. They were waiting for permission to change, right? It's like, hey, can I really make this decision? It's like, yes, you can. And I want to give them the confidence that they go and make the change. But they were asking for permission. And it boggles my mind, because these are all like type A personalities that usually take charge. But to go in and say, I'm going to launch something to market and run a test right now, it felt too much. It felt like they need to have a check and balance somewhere else. And that's where balancing competence and clarity takes a long time. Which is why I always tell everybody, you have to start now. Because if you believe everything else that's going on, if you believe that there's no playbook, as a manager, you can't be standing up there giving orders. You have to trust the people who know that particular market segment, who've been listening to the customer, who know the product. And they've got to be able to run it.
Yeah, I told this one story to Peter about an analyst who really, really knew the data deeply, okay? And I said to her, look, you need to do more than just present the data because it's so complex out there. Present your recommendations. And her first response to me was, I can't do that, I'd be fired. I was like, no, of course you want. Management wants you to do that. But you've got to change their mindset about that. And that takes time, and we're still in the midst of doing that. It's an ongoing issue.